All right, let's move on.
All right.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
All right, Matt Stafford's at the top of the quarterback list, guys that performed incredible this week. I believe it was his best game since 2011. 27 for 337, 5 touchdowns. Dominated a Philadelphia defense that is can barely be called that. I mean, they're very bad right now.
Things went south real quick for the Eagles, where I felt like they were a decent defense.
So I listened to the show, part of the show last week, and we talked about the Eagles defense, and you asked me the question directly. Would you play the Eagles defense against Detroit? And I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember what I said, but what I said is whenever you have a week like you did against Tampa, you better wait a week to see if that's a trend. And that's kind of what the thought process was, because I had somebody else text me and say they played the Eagles and they're so mad, and I'm like, they just gave up 5 touchdowns to Jameis Winston. If you wanted to roll them out there and roll the dice, go ahead. And it did not pay off. 2 negative weeks in a row.
The game started at 10:30. At about 10:10, I dropped him.
Yeah.
And I made the last second decision. I was like, I'm not screwing around with this. And it was that paid off.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what did not pay off for me. Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think some people might want to hear you speak about that.
I did not like Russell Wilson coming into this week. He had not been efficient. People probably felt more positive of him because he had that huge week against San Francisco, his best week of the year. So I didn't like him. He was my sit of the week, and then he has the best game of his career.
5 touchdowns.
With the Steelers had been playing good defense. It wasn't that I thought Russell Wilson would be 0 touchdowns. I expected him to have an average game. I was very wrong, and Russell Wilson would just crushed the Steelers defense.
You know what was really weird for me this week? Because one of the reasons that I liked that as a set of the week was Pittsburgh was coming off the bye. Normally, the teams coming off a bye, I mean, you've seen it this year. They have really had the upper hand. Not this week. You had the New Orleans Saints, the New York Giants, and the Pittsburgh Steelers so far as the 3 teams that have played coming off of bye.
Funny.
And they all gave up. I mean,
And the Browns tonight, right?
Yeah, the Browns tonight. So that's just weird. I don't remember the last time where the whole week bye teams coming in just stink. I mean, relatively.
Other guys with big weeks: Ryan Fitzpatrick, Phillip Rivers, Tyrod Taylor, Derek Carr, Blake Bortles. They all had kind of top 10 weeks. Is there somebody that stuck out to you moving forward? Was it good to see Bortles kind of bounce back in that way?
Yeah, it was nice to see Bortles bounce back. Unfortunately for Blake Bortles, the line of scrimmage became an issue where if he could just move that forward a couple yards on his plays, then he would have had a few more touchdowns. Allen Robinson would have had another touchdown. Unfortunately, that's against the rules.
Yeah, you can't run past it and then throw.
So that was a problem.
They just added that.
For me, Derek Carr was great to see him get back on track. Not that we really doubted he would.
Really, really nice game-winning drive in the rain with a minute left against Tennessee.
Yes.
And Seth Roberts exploded, and we'll talk about him. All right, let's move on to wide receivers then. Doug Baldwin, 6 for 145 and 3, the main beneficiary of the Russell Wilson big day. Sammy Watkins.
Whew, man.
Huge day for Sammy Watkins.
Watkins and Taylor had it going, and it looked nice.
It going equated to, I'm going to throw the ball up to you over and over again.
Yeah, well, and that's what
really what it was.
That's what you need to do with Sammy Watkins.
And it paid off until they stopped doing it in the second half.
And because the Chiefs defense actually played a pretty good game aside from
they lost Justin Houston too.
Yeah, aside from Sammy Watkins was going off, but I mean, the Chiefs as a whole looked pretty good. With Doug Baldwin, what was very funny in that game was it turned into Doug Baldwin versus Markus Wheaton.
Oh, the 2 monster wide receivers going
as
at
everyone
it.
Saw.
What was it, like a combined 350 yards or something like that between those two grade A wide receivers? Now, I've got a question for you guys, though, in all seriousness, about Doug Baldwin or Tyler Lockett or whoever. With Jimmy Graham going down, he was one of the highest targeted players on that team. The reason we have always been all year off of Seattle is because you just don't know. Is it going to be Jimmy Graham? Is it going to be Doug Baldwin? Is it going to be Lockett? Well, Russell Wilson looks like he's throwing the ball more, right? And he's playing well. And now Jimmy Graham goes down, so more targets to go to your wide receivers. So Doug Baldwin 2 weeks ago was 7 for 134 and a touchdown. Caught 6 receptions last week, 6 this week for 145 and 3. Is he a player that, I think he's worth picking up. Is he a guy that you would start?
He's definitely a 3 to me, and this helps. The injury to Graham establishes his baseline to be at that 5 or 6 catch level to me. Lockett's still going to be involved, but Baldwin's been that guy. He's having the best season of his career right now. He's very reliable, breaking some big plays, scoring touchdowns. I think he had 2 against the Cardinals. It's the game you were referencing. So, yeah, for me, he's at the wide receiver 3 startable.
Yeah, he's just a flex and a 3 to me still. We've seen what he can do at his peak, but I just don't see it that way. I believe he's had 1 double-digit target game the entire year, about 8 targets on Sunday. So it's just with Jimmy Graham going down, that just bumps up Luke Wilson and the backup tight ends situation in Seattle. It doesn't move the needle very much for me on Baldwin. He's a fine pickup if you want, but he's not anybody I'm losing my priority or spending out the rest of my fab.
Sure.
So Markus Wheaton and Seth Roberts. Seth Roberts for Oakland had 6 for 113 and 2 touchdowns. Markus Wheaton had 9 for 201 and a touchdown. These are guys that just flashed, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't go rush out.
Nope.
No, Seth Roberts, his last touchdown kind of came on partially a fluky referee call that allowed them to get there, but that play, there was kind of just a broken coverage, and he was open, and it was just right guy, right place,
And Wheaton was, to me, more of a situation. They sacrificed Antonio Brown over to Sherman. Then basically the entire game, and Sherman played a great defensive game against Brown, nearly shut him out. So I think that was just a situation of the Steelers decided, okay, we'll take Sherman on Antonio Brown. If it happens, it happens. If not, we'll feed somebody else. And Wheaton was the beneficiary.
All right, Jarvis Landry had a huge week, 13 catches, 165 and a touchdown. Jeremy Maclin, 9 for 160 and a touchdown, giving me a little bit of hope for my all my Maclin water bets that I made at the beginning of the year. Mostly the one that I hope he gets 1,000 yards. This will help.
That's going to be close now. I really.
Brandon Marshall had a huge game, 9 for 131 and 2 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton surprised some people, 6 for 95 and 2 touchdowns. And Odell Beckham Jr., 9 for 142 and a touchdown, including that left-handed diving touchdown.
That was nasty.
Nice. Wow.
But they lost.
Yeah.
And now the Redskins sit atop the NFC
And
East.
Washington really tried to lose that game. The mentality that they had, it looked like they had shut it down. Offense of, okay, let's try not to lose. That is the worst. And speaking of trying not to lose, Mike Tomlin.
I was wondering if this was coming.
I was watching the game with my dad, and we were having this conversation of, even before the situation came up, like, okay, well, if they get stopped here and they go to 4th down, do you kick the field goal? The situation was they were down 7? Was that it? I think they were down 7 at the time. So it was, or maybe even 6. I think they might have been.
I think it was less than 7.
But so it was kick the field goal or go for it. Big Ben runs it up to the 4, and then do we kick the field goal? And I'm like, no, you don't kick the field goal here. You try to win, because let's say you don't get it. Either way, you still have to shut them down, and you have a great chance to shut them down. They're out there 4. Just try and win the game. Don't let them dictate what happens. You be in control. I can't stand it's more of an old-fashioned way of thinking, maybe, and we can debate whether I'm right or wrong. I just don't see why you wouldn't try to score right there.
It's always one of those things, though, that, not really a counterpoint, just a perspective thing to add in there is, it's always one of those things where if it works out, then you're a genius, and if you don't, you're an idiot. They were down 2. You could have just not given up an 80-yard touchdown to Doug Baldwin to end the game.
But
too.
That's the thing.
But either way,
your defense was not working. Like Seattle they were destroying, especially in the second half of that game. The Steelers could not stop them. So why not let your really high-powered offense be the ones who control the game?
Yeah, I could see that. So it didn't work out. Out.
No, it did not. It did not work out. Neither did that fake, field goal, fake punt.
There were a couple bad trick plays this weekend. That was one of them. The Cardinals ran one that was just abhorrent, where they lined Carson Palmer up and had the backup quarterback in, and then he just handed it off to Chris Johnson around the end that Palmer was on, expecting a block from Palmer.
Yeah.
It was just weird. Didn't work. So let's talk about, is there anybody else at the wide receiver position that we need to kind of give a fantasy context to? Or, you know, these are guys you're starting. I mean, it was good for Marshall owners to see him have a big
And
week.
Calvin of course, I
owners,
think.
8 for 93 and 3 touchdowns. It's funny. It's like these quarterbacks that have 5 touchdowns. Throw them to somebody.
they target their
Doug
best
Baldwin.
players.
I think it's the 7th Thanksgiving in a row that Calvin Johnson has caught a touchdown. That's
He's
pretty good.
Well, one of the
monster.
things that talked me into starting Stafford was that he had 330 yards average on Thanksgiving. So the running backs that had big weeks, you had Adrian Peterson, 29 for 158, 2 touchdowns. Really the most reliable guy right now. Eddie Lacy, 17 for 105. Mike, on the show last week, you said verbatim, this is the week Eddie Lacy gets it going. You said it on the show, 4 for 34 and a touchdown through the air. Really was the guy in Green Bay. And then D'Angelo Williams, he had a pretty good game because of all the dump-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer Ware, 19.
The Chiefs is as much grief as I give Andy Reid. That guy knows how to get a running back involved.
Yeah, this is the third one now. And Spencer Ware, I think, was the third best running back this week. I believe the Chiefs have a higher proportion of running touchdowns than anybody in the league. And so whether it's Char West, Spencer Ware, or Jamal Charles earlier in the year.
And moving forward, for those who are, if you are in doubt if Char West is out, Spencer Ware, Nile Davis. We weren't. I guess me personally, I wasn't sure. Maybe Nile Davis gets a little bit more involved, and they're not ready to throw Ware right out there. Well,
nope, they were.
They sure did. So Spencer Ware he's a great play if Char West is out.
Along with Eddie Lacy's resurgence, who we liked at the beginning of the year, you got C.J. Anderson coming back. Coming back hot in that Snow Bowl last night. 15 for 113 and 2 touchdowns, 4 for 40 through the air. Had a great game.
And he looked great.
But what do you make of the Hillman C.J. Anderson split going forward here? Who do you trust?
It's Anderson to me.
Yeah, when it gets colder, it's Anderson. I still think Hillman looked fine to me.
Hillman,
there was nothing Hillman did that made me go, oh, boy, this is it's going to depend on game flow. It's going to depend on need.
And this is something we had talked about last week was the Gary Kubiak could not run his system with Peyton Manning. We saw it early in the year where they had to figure out how to actually get it so Peyton Manning could
not be under
succeed.
center.
Yeah.
Not be under center, basically.
And Brock Osweiler, they were breaking down the snaps of on the football program.
Yeah, that was
of how many shotgun passes or pistol did Peyton Manning take, and it's nearly all of them. And then you go to Osweiler, almost everything he does is under center, which allows Kubiak to run his system. And you see finally a healthy C.J. Anderson combined with the actual Kubiak running system.
Yep.
And wow, massive production.
So maybe Anderson can be one of those guys that if you had him on your bench and you need somebody for the playoffs, he might end up giving you games that you didn't expect. Now, Tevin Coleman had a good game, but he had one of the weirdest games because I watched this. He was both simultaneously great and horrible all game long.
Yeah, he had a
dropping pass after pass. Fumbling the ball at the end of a 45. That was the best summary. His game was running 45 yards and fumbling.
That's a tremendous breakdown of Tevin Coleman's game.
So, and then moving forward, they said, if Freeman's healthy, he'll just be the guy again. So this is a temporary thing for Coleman. I expect Freeman back.
Yeah, I do too. Freeman was out with a concussion.
All right, we finally got a game. Tight ends out of Julius Thomas. How confident are you starting Julius Thomas after a 9 for 116 and a touchdown performance? Alan Hearns was carted off the field. We should have mentioned that in the news. It's reported to be just a concussion. He reported that he's okay, but that was never.
That guy is getting beat up.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Ayupati injury where he was taken off on a stretcher, looked incredibly serious, but actually got through the concussion protocol pretty quickly. So we'll have to watch the practice reports and see how Alan Hearns comes back. But he's played through near death seemingly all year. So who knows? Maybe he'll be back this week. I did like Julius Thomas. He was targeted a lot. I don't know if it was just because you're playing, a team that's got good corners and has been giving it up to the tight end a lot. But it was nice to see him looked for, used. They were drawing up plays for him, and it hasn't really seemed like that so far this year with the Jags. So
if you had to start Julius Thomas, or let's see, next week, Scott Chandler.
Scott Chandler.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just because I know that Chandler will be involved and he'll get 8 to 11 targets, where Julius Thomas, we've seen him completely disappear. So if you need, depending on your team need, if you need huge points, then sure, I'm fine putting Thomas out there. I just think that Chandler will be the safer option, assuming that Gronk is missing the week, especially against the Eagles. So it's Scott Chandler for me.
No, we had Ryan Griffin, Vance McDonald. I don't want to see that name McDonald right now. Cameron Brate. Might give you a hint of what I ate over the weekend. All right, Cameron Brate. So all three guys scored. Here's the thing about Vance McDonald.
He had a farm?
Yes, he had a farm. And back-to-back weeks, he's in our sub-muffin section. But Garrett Selleck went out in this game.
Yes.
So Vance McDonald, sneaky stream for those Gronk owners?
Absolutely. If you miss out on the Scott Chandler sweepstakes that's going to happen this week, why not? Vance McDonald, Blaine Gabbert is targeting his tight end. And Blaine Gabbert has not fallen directly on his face. I've been pleasantly surprised with Blaine Gabbert's play.
Yeah. Anybody else want to talk about? Gronk had a good game. Are we expecting repeat performances from Ryan Griffin or Cameron Brate?
Not going to try to call it.
No.